Today on Contractor Cast, we're going to talk about how to boost your Google rankings using Nearby Now. Stay tuned. So if you're like most home service contractors, you've got one physical location, but you service an entire area around you, many other cities and towns around you. But Google makes it difficult for you to rank in those neighboring towns and cities because you're not physically located there, right? So there are a number of different ways to get around that, and Nearby Now we have found to be the best way to get around that. So the way that most people try and get over this hurdle is by creating service pages, multiple service pages. And we do the same thing, right? So you create a service page for each and every town and city that you service, because that in itself will, you're trying to get Google to see your city A page and city B page separately, so that when somebody in city A does a search, that particular page comes up. When somebody in city B does a search, that particular page comes up. So that's what you're trying to accomplish with multiple service area pages. The problem with that is that most people create a service area page and it's a static page. It's not dynamic. So the content on that page is never being updated or refreshed. And that's a minus on Google. So that's not a red flag, but it's a minus on Google's side, right? They want to see content that is continuously being updated. That's also one of the reasons why you hear a lot of people talking about blogs, and that you should, constantly sort of be adding to your web page and growing your website rather over time. So we use Nearby Now to get over that exact same hurdle, creating service pages. But one of the main differences is that those service pages get what's called dynamic content. So the content is always fresh on that page. I'm going to kind of get into exactly how Nearby Now does that. So essentially, Nearby Now allows your company to get Google ranking credit for every job that it does. And because those jobs are happening all over your area, different towns and cities, it allows you to build your online presence in those neighboring towns and cities where you're not physically located. And that's sort of the beauty of this particular system, and that it and what it brings to the table. So the question always comes up, how does Nearby Now do this, right? And there are four main components of Nearby Now: the check-ins, the review requests, the dynamic content, and then ultimately the SEO benefit that it provides. So the first component that we're going to go over is the check-in. And this is what sets things off for Nearby Now. You've got to do the check-in first, and it initiates everything else after that. So check-ins are geotagged summaries about issues your customers had and the actions your techs took to resolve them. And the important part of that is the geotagging. And this is the metadata that is attached to the actual check-in, right? So when this all works together, this is what shows Google exactly where your tech was located at, or where that job took place, and matches that to the content that's then put onto your website, right? And this is what gives you the credit for completing a job in city A and another job in city B, and thereby boosting your ranking in those neighboring towns and cities. So the question that we get asked probably the most when it comes to Nearby Now is how to do a check-in, or what's the best way to do a check-in. And it's really simple, right? The check-in doesn't have to be this paragraph, long list of things that were done. It's really a summary of what the customer's issue was when they called, and what the tech did to resolve that issue. As you see in this particular example, when the customer called in, they said their issue was that the AC unit was blowing warm air. And the tech, in order to resolve this particular issue, performed an AC tune-up and replaced the air filter. And that's really the extent of the check-in. A quick summary of what the customer's problem was, as well as what you as a tech, or what your tech did to resolve the issue. Once you put that in, that in itself is the check-in. And that content, every time a job is completed and your service tech completes that check-in for each and every job, that content then is also uploaded to the website. And imagine, obviously, you're doing multiple jobs a day, and if you've got multiple texts, you're getting constant updates on your website on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. So the check-in is where it starts. I mean, this is what kicks everything off, but it has to happen consistently, and you've got to get either your techs or your in-office CSR or whoever's going to be designated to do Nearby Now for you to do this on a consistent basis. Every job gets checked in, whether it's just an estimate or whether it's a booked call that had something done or that was completed on the job. The second the second component rather for Nearby Now is the review requests. So when that tech is on the job site and they have done their check-in, they've written the summary of what the issue was and what they did to resolve it. The next part of that is step 2, to request a review from the customer. And they do that just by asking the customer whether or not they would prefer an email review or have that review request sent via text. So again, another great thing about Nearby Now is that texting option, because people get review requests that go to their inboxes and just get lost, like most things. And things in people's inboxes and email inboxes tend to just pile up. Whereas when you receive a text message, people typically look at that text message a lot sooner, and they don't let it just pile up and go unanswered. Now, obviously, not everyone's always going to complete the actual review request, but at least it gives you that option of sending it via text. So the other cool thing about review requests in Nearby Now is what they call intelligent review routing. So when they click on that link and opt to leave you a review and they're signed into their Google account, they're automatically routed to your Google My Business page where they leave that review. You can also do the same thing with Facebook, where when you send that request and they're signed into their Facebook account, it automatically routes them to leave a review on Facebook. However, if those two things aren't the case, if they're not signed into Facebook and they're not signed into their Google account, Nearby Now still has its own way of capturing that review request independently and then putting that review onto your website. So again, and that, when you have intelligent review routing turned on, you typically see a 70-30 split, where most people have a Google or Facebook account and they're signed in on their device and they wind up leaving a review on those platforms. But occasionally it does happen that, they're not signed in or they don't have an account and they still leave you a review on Nearby Now, which is still a great place to leave you a review. It still gets, and it ultimately gets put onto your website. Again, putting new, fresh content on your website whenever that does happen. So I know I've touched on dynamic content a couple of times already, but this is truly what separates Nearby Now from a lot of other applications out there. And so because your texts are checking in and this content is being added to your website on a continuous basis, you don't have to do things necessarily like writing blogs, which most people just don't have the time to do. So this in essence is allowing your techs or whoever's, again, doing the Nearby Now reviews for you to write these little pieces of content and have that uploaded to your site. This helps you make Google's decision easy for it, right? So if your content is continuously being updated, it's going to just automatically rank higher than your competitors' content for the same thing that hasn't been updated in 9 months or a year or more, because Google is in the business of giving its users, the people who are searching for your service, the most relevant information possible, the most up-to-date information possible, the most authoritative information possible. And so when it's looking through all the web pages out there and it determines that your web page is more up-to-date, has more authority, etc., it's going to rank that page higher over time. So that dynamic content ties into component number 4, which is the SEO benefit. So consistently great check-ins equal higher rankings over time. And that's the simple formula. So unlike pay-per-click, SEO is something that you have to do over time. Now that we've talked about Nearby Now and how it works, let's jump on the computer and show you exactly what it looks like. So I'm signed into one of our clients' accounts here in Nearby Now. And I really just want to kind of go through exactly how the check-ins work and how that information then gets translated to your website and ultimately how it shows up in Google search. So right here, as you see, this is where I'm going to put in myself as the customer. I'm going to make up an address here. I'm going to put in the city that we are targeting where the job was completed. And I'm going to put in the zip code. And here's where I'm going to just put in my email address this time. This is also where you could put in, if you were putting in this check-in for your customer, to send them the review request via email or text. And in this case, I'm going to just put in my email address. And this is where you'd be able to add an image. So if we could just completed an HVAC install, we could take a picture of this new unit and attach it to the check-in. So here's where we're going to type in the check-in itself. Again, the customer's issue, as well as what the service technician did to resolve the issue. So in our example, it was that the AC was blowing warm air. And in this case, the technician did a AC tune-up and replaced the air filter. And we're going to submit the check-in request. So now the customer has received a review request via email and the check-in has been posted to their website. So I'm going to go over to their website just to verify that that has been completed. And I'm going to go to their service area and I'm going to go to Helena where we did the check-in and see what pops up. Now, again, as previously mentioned, this is the service page for Helena. And the objective of this page is to rank for, the services that they do in Helena, Alabama. They're not physically located there, but again, they provide service in this area and they want to rank for, when people are doing a search in this area, so they come up as high as possible. And this is the Nearby Now plugin. So here you see 1 minute ago our example, and we chose Andy K as our technician in this example. But I typed in AC is blowing warm air, performed an AC tune-up, and replaced the air filter. So immediately, as soon as that technician completes that check-in, that information or that content gets posted to the website. And over time, you'll see here that, days and days and days worth of check-ins in this particular area. Every so often that they hit Helena or a technician hits Helena, they're doing a check-in. They're also getting these reviews over here. So these are all the individuals who, were not necessarily logged into Google or into Facebook and wound up leaving a review that was collected by Nearby Now. And that information also then gets posted to the website. And this is also, this heat map here, as we refer to it, is an indication of this particular area and all the check-ins and all the review requests that they're doing in and around this area over time. Again, so these guys service many, many areas around Birmingham, Alabama, where they are physically located. And that's what these service pages are here to do. Again, is to help them rank in and around the cities around Birmingham, Alabama. And if you see here, if I go to Google and I just do a search here for AC tune-up, which is one of our keywords that we use in our description, and I search for AC tune-up in Helena, Alabama. Let's see what comes up. We get the ads at the top. We get the map. There they are also in the map listing. But because we did a search for AC tune-up, and on the on the Helena page, they have lots of descriptions or lots of check-ins with AC tune-up in them. They also rank #1 here in organic when we type in that term, AC tune-up in Helena, Alabama. So again, if you're trying to rank in a surrounding area, city, or town, the more check-ins you have that, in this case could be AC repair or air conditioning repair or whatever it is that you're trying to target, the more check-ins you have with that, the more likely, again, over time, that your page will begin to increase its rankings and rank very high for that search term. So that's how you can boost your rankings using Nearby Now. If you'd like to learn more about how Nearby Now can help your home service business, reach out to us through our website, give us a call. We'd be glad to talk with you and go over your website and how we can implement Nearby Now. Until next time.